So I'm very sceptical about there being such a thing as cancel culture, because it usually seems to me to involve people demanding the right to say disgusting things without being called disgusting. But I do wonder, actually, whether perhaps we're all looking at it from the wrong angle. People who claim to care about British values, people who use it as a sort of wooden spoon over which with which they hit the rest of us over the head, are currently attacking a future King of England, all of the bishops in the Church of England, one of Winston Churchill's most precious legacies, British lawyers, the rule of law, and legislation drawn up by British lawyers in order to do two things, as I understand it, to guard against Stalin's Russia, which was very much on the rise, and to guard against the possibility of a repetition of Adolf Hitler's Germany, of Nazi Germany. And I think this is a word I've never used before in the context of law. I think the most beautiful thing about the European Convention on Human Rights is its honesty. As I understand it, and I want to stress that I'm not, I mean, I know a little bit more about these issues than, say, I don't know, Priti Patel and Liz Truss, but I'm no expert on any of this stuff. As I understand it, the beautiful but rather chilling principle upon which the European Convention on Human Rights is built is that it could actually happen anywhere. So you came out of the back of the Second World War reeling from man's inhumanity to man. I mean, truly reeling from what was done on European soil by one European to another. And you wanted, if you had won that war, if you were Winston Churchill and his allies, not an infallible or a perfect human being, but nonetheless somebody who most people who wang on about British values are supposed to revere and respect. What it was designed to do was to recognise that that kind of horror could happen anywhere, that any country could fall victim to, I suppose we'd have to say, I don't know in Stalin's case whether the R word works, but to corrupt demagogues. Any country could fall victim to populist, corrupt demagogues. So if it wasn't for the madness of the last 6 years, I suspect that events in America on January the 6th of last year would have constituted the most resounding and important reminder of why we are so lucky to be signatories to the European Convention on Human Rights. It exists literally to prevent the kind of behaviour and the kind of people that came close to toppling the biggest democracy, or arguably the most powerful democracy in the world. Isn't that incredible? Because what Churchill recognised is that it could even happen here. That's the absolute beauty of it. And this is what an awful lot of the people who told you that leaving the European Union would make us richer and that they needed us more than we needed them and that we'd be able to stay in the single market while abolishing freedom of movement, all of the people, and they've already been on the telly and the radio today, Ian Duncan Smith, Gerald Howarth, all of these people who've been proved catastrophically wrong about what leaving the European Union would look like, and now limbering up, secure in the knowledge that they'll be invited to write newspaper columns and be invited onto loads of programmes. They're limbering up to do even more damage to our country, to display even more weapons-grade ignorance about issues they don't have the first inkling of understanding of. How can Ian Duncan Smith move effortlessly from claiming that there was no need to read the withdrawal agreement because everybody understood what was in it, to complaining about what was in the withdrawal agreement after actually reading what he called the fine print, to preparing now to vote to abandon the withdrawal agreement because it's something that we should never have signed up to in the first place, and yet still think, when he is invited to pontificate upon membership of the European Convention of Human Rights, still think that he has any qualifications or authority to comment upon anything ever again. And yet here we are with a sort of grim sense of inevitability. We're now going to have a debate about whether or not we should leave the European Convention of Human Rights, which I don't know whether you're aware of this, but it's always a school day on this programme, isn't it? You have the subscription to the ECHR written in to the Good Friday Agreement, but also written into the trade agreement that we currently have with the European Union. So somehow leaving that, and 2 countries, do you know which 2 countries have left the European Convention of Human Rights since it was originally signed? I'll tell you in a minute. So leaving it, and whether people like Ian Duncan Donuts even understand this, I do not know. Our job, of course, is to tell them or to ask them whether they know this. It would automatically endanger and possibly negate the Good Friday Agreement, which the government is currently breaking international law to, quotes, protect, end quotes, and the TCA, the Trade and Community Agreement that we have, the trading agreement that we've signed with the European Union, both of which have membership of the ECHR, subscription to the ECHR baked in to the detail. Isn't that incredible? And yet here you are, being invited once again to jump up and down, complain about foreigners, in this case foreign judges. Don't mention the fact that every signatory to the convention provides 1 judge. There are 47 judges, including a British one. It is a cooperative supranational effort designed to ensure that what happened in Germany in particular could not happen again. What happened in Germany in the first half of the 20th century couldn't happen again in another European country at any other point. At some point. And I guess what we need to be aware of is that it works. It works really well. You would have laughed at me 10 years ago if I'd given you one of my well-rehearsed lines about the only people who should really have a problem with human rights legislation are the ones who aren't humans, right? But now, having persuaded us to impose economic sanctions on our own country, crippling our own economy, having persuaded us to abolish our own freedom of movement because something foreigners something, having persuaded us to inflict untold damage on our international reputation by boasting about our willingness to break international law and lying about our readiness to do it, the same people who've done all of that to the United Kingdom are about to start trying to persuade you to abandon the European Convention of Human Rights. And I don't just mean the politicians. I mean people in this profession as well. I mean journalists. I mean the usual suspects. Daily Mail today doing a hatchet job on Michelle Hussein of Radio 4's Today programme, of all people. It's incredible what happens when populist, corrupt demagoguery takes hold. All bets are off, leading to a country in which future king, all the bishops from the Church of England, and one of Winston Churchill's most precious legacies, and British lawyers, are all today coming under attack from people who tell you that they're the ones sticking up for British values. That doesn't make any sense at all, does it? What are the values that you're sticking up for over at the Daily Mail? You attack British judges, you attack British politicians, you attack British lawyers, you attack Winston Churchill's most enduring and precious legacy, you attack a future King of England. What are the values you actually stick up for? The right to be racist, which is not a British value at all. Neither is it unique. It exists in all societies. Or the desire to be racist does. I'm not even sure what the question is yet, but I do know that the one I'll answer, the 2 countries that have voluntarily detached themselves from the European Convention of Human Rights are Greece, which did so after a military coup, but returned once normality and democracy had been restored. So if you're in the business of military coups, you need to get yourself out of the European Convention of Human Rights. And Russia, when it invaded Ukraine. That's the company that people like Ian Duncan Smith and various Sun and Daily Mail journalists will be encouraging you to keep. We need to be more like military coup Greece and post-Ukraine invasion Russia. They're the kind of countries we should be getting into bed with. That's what we want to look like. That is the face we want to present to the rest of the world. Who do you want to be like? Post-military coup Greece and post-Ukraine invasion Russia. That's it. And I find it a curious combination. 52% incredible and unbelievable, 48% ploddingly inevitable. That the same stupid people with their stupid Little England arguments are going to be coming out now to make the same pointless, fact-free claims about membership of something that Winston Churchill dreamt of and delivered. Winston Churchill dreamt of and delivered. And we're supposed to listen to people like Ian Duncan Smith and Jacob Rees-Mogg tell us why we should undo one of his most precious legacies. The mind boggles.